Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside of their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
First Responder Financial Freedom with Daniel. Daniel is coming to us from where?
Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas.
Texas. So Daniel's been in the fire department for over 2 decades. I'm not going to say his age. He got into land acquisition the last couple of years, and how do I say this? Getting ready for retirement. He wants to go on to the next step. So we're going to go into how he got here, where he's at in his career, what his plans are for the future. So without further ado, I want to introduce our friend Daniel Browne of Texas. Daniel, how are you today, buddy?
I'm great. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and discuss a little bit about what I do.
So tell us how you got into the fire department, and what led you to get into there after your juvenile years.
I started out doing construction, and that was kind of what I was raised doing. And I just, for whatever reason, as I got into my early 20s, I had some desire. You know, it seemed like that job that everyone wants. So I started the process, went to fire school while doing construction on my days off, or doing construction and then going to school on the time off, and got my fire cert. You had to have EMT back then. That's been back in the 90s. So paramedic was not quite as prevalent as it was here in Texas, or it is now here in Texas. So, yeah, you know, I tested a lot of different cities and got hired at the one I'm on well over, like I said, 2 decades ago. It's been a great career. It's I still enjoy it, but you can tell your body starts aching. And like most of us, we all do something part-time. And I was at a point where after 20 years, I was still working 7 days a week on doing construction on my days off. And I didn't know what a podcast was. I wasn't that astute to social media. And one of the guys turned me on to them, and I was doing the construction. I was putting on hardware in apartments, and it was just tedious, menial things. But it was repetitive. So I put the little earbuds in and started listening to these podcasts, and started out with things that interest me. And then that led into land, and I've heard people talking about making money in land. And so I pursued that, the educational piece of that. And that led me into, you know, us doing some bigger deals today. So it's kind of a quick synopsis.
So you started small, and they started growing it, and then you got more comfortable with it, and they started going into bigger deals. So I'm looking forward to going down that rabbit hole. How old, just out of curiosity, how old were you when you started listening to the podcast, give or take?
Oh, I was well into my 40s. I mean, it's only been a few years. I've been doing land, I think, since maybe 18 or 19. And so it was in that time frame that as I was listening to them, it started out as silly stuff, farming, just things that interest me. And that farming led into a guy talking about there's gurus, I guess is the word, not just educational people out there in all these spaces. Yeah. And so you start following them, listening to them, and so that's, I mean, like I said, to answer your question, it's only been a few years. Now they're in my ear all the time. You guys are in my ear, whatever, you know, particular people you listen to.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So when you say do land, what does that mean?
My particular strategy, it's evolving, but it started out as we sent direct mail, which that seems to be the key for a lot of things. I'm looking at other opportunities, but right now I strictly do direct mail, looking for off-market opportunities for people that have a property that I can buy undervalued and a lot of times we do nothing with it and flip it. In the lower valued, lower dollar purchase price properties, a lot of those you can buy because someone doesn't want them anymore. They bought it with the dream of moving to Wyoming or wherever America, and it just didn't work out. So they are just have a tax burden. So they'll sell it to you cheap. Go ahead.
Are you working primarily in like the Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston area? Are you like more nationwide?
You find nationwide is the answer, but you kind of find where, just like whatever investment vehicle you guys use, you find your people. Start building that team, for lack of a better word, but you start finding the brokers that will sell the properties well for you, the title companies you like to work with, surveyors, whomever that may be. You find that the areas that you know how to price them, your market. But that's countrywide. I specifically have targeted Texas, Missouri, and Wyoming. Those have been areas that I kind of circle back to. I've done deals in other states, but I kind of always migrate back to there, and I'm trying to hone those market as I've evolved in this business, trying to line it down a little bit. So,
on your Facebook page, I look on there once in a while on LandSisters.com. So you basically go and find tracts of land that are off market, and then you try to market those pieces of land to people to sell for a profit, and you're basically the middleman. Like, you're almost like a wholesaler. How did you get into finding the land? Like, what prompted you to go after like basically raw land before you went into single family houses or other avenues? Like, why that?
I think it was strictly the I guess, I don't know what good word to use, but I like the agricultural lifestyle. I live in the country. I like that, as well as I have enough projects at my own house that I didn't want to get into something where, and not that I won't, but it was just a vehicle that, an opportunity. Plus, I didn't have a lot of money to start out with. So it gave me that chance to buy something for a few $1,000s and do it. And as I've grown and kind of listening to other folks, trying to hone in on my craft. So instead of branching off and going to do single family or multifamily or the vacation houses, I'm choosing to just really hyper focus on this until I get where I want to be. And then maybe I'll start looking at other opportunities. But I'm by design choosing to stay with this, right or wrong. I feel like it's the right strategy for me.
That's the thing. That's one of the things I love about real estate. There's no right or wrong answer. There's a better way to do it or a worse way to do it. But it's not necessarily right or wrong. It's just what you focus on. On the last podcast we did, like, the guys are giving me a little bit of ribbing because I want to buy a airport. Because I think airport space is underutilized, and I think there's a lot of add-on value. But it's like, that's how my mind works. I think it's interesting, so I'd focus on something like that. You think land is interesting. There's less moving parts, less things to break. You can only screw up dirt so much. And you can always push it back into place if you need to. So how are you finding the buyers? How are you finding the sellers? How are you finding the land? Like, walk me through your process.
Well, there's subscriptions to aggregators of the data from the counties. So a lot of it is just county data. So I'll scrub through that. And personally, I have my way, and I look for people that are out of county or out of state, and I send them a letter. The land niche has a few different strategies, but mine specifically is a blind offer. So I put an amount that said, Aaron, I want to buy your 10 acres in wherever America for X amount. So I formulate a number using data that I scrape off of Zillow, Lands of America, all the land sites, to see what that land in that county is trading for, and then I develop a number based on that. And
so when I was selling some land in West Virginia about 2 years ago now. It was 42 acres, and I had to sit down with the realtor, and he's like, okay, your cost per acre goes to this amount. So we'll use just round numbers. Like, it's $1,000 an acre if you're over 40 acres. If you're under 40 acres, it's $2,000 an acre. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. He goes, it's just how the numbers break down. So we had it broken down to how much it costs per acre up to a certain amount, and then we add value onto the house on top of that. And then we just did square footage, $1 per square foot for that house to get a market value. Like that's how I did it. How do you look at land and acreage? Is it because I've seen like one of the things I saw on your page recently was like 341 acres in whatever part of the country that was. Like, how do you value the land?
So a lot of it is like any direct mail piece. That offer kind of kicks the door in, and I'll get plenty of people that are mad with the offer. But what I've found is I could send you that same letter piece with 150% of the value, and you could still get ticked off because it's special to you. But you could also be happy if you got it at 30 cents on the dollar. But I value the properties pretty broadly. When I formulate that number, I do it through those websites that I mentioned, the lands, all the realtor type accessible sites, seeing what land is trading for in that acreage range. And then I average that all out and send it at a percentage of that amount. So I send it at, say, 35 cents on the dollar, 35% of that. Some of the acreages are going to be high. Some of them are going to be low. You kind of find that where I'm looking to buy it at that 50 cents on the dollar. That's kind of my target. So I got a 50% return, or I'll get 100% on my money if I buy that property and once I sell it.
Now, do you differentiate the prices depending on the zoning? So like out here where I am, your commercial land is valued significantly different than commercial land.
My primary target is rural vacant land. So I like recreational properties. I've kind of moved where I'm looking a little more at farming properties. I do, just because of our schedule with work and how I've kind of chosen to do mine, is I send everybody a letter. If you're an out-of-state owner or an out-of-county owner and you have 7 acres to 7,000, I'm going to send you a letter with an offer on it. You could probably filter that out through the data aggregator and pull out some of that zoning. But me personally, I don't, because if on that one-off, kind of like the farm you mentioned, that's a huge profit for my family that I got that deal. So if I was to scrape that out for whatever reason, zoning or whatever, and I didn't get that call, man, that would have, I'm shooting for those. I'm going to spend a little bit on the data, spend a little bit on the mail, and hope a lot for that sweetheart of a deal that comes in once or twice a year.
So Dan, you said it's mainly vacant rural land. So immediately I start to think like, okay, great. You got it at 50 cents on the dollar, but then how's the disposition or the sell side work? Are you just contacting people with adjacent land? Because I would think that it's of highest and best use to them to try and sell it to the person that owns the lot next to it.
A lot of times that's one of my, again, everybody does it different. There's some people that have their own cell sites and move that way. I've chosen, like I said, going to the Missouri, Wyoming, Texas. I have brokers in that area that I trust. When I have a deal come in, they tell me, hey, that one looks good, as well as I can sell it for this. But you're absolutely correct. That first call or first letter that I send, because I can get their data, whether I skip trace them or just get their address through the assessor site, and I send them a letter saying, hey, I'm buying the property next to you. I'm going to put it for sale. Would you be interested in it? And if you are, call me. Here's my phone number. And I've sold a dozen properties over the course just doing that. So that's a huge strategy. It's not my only one, but for me, that particular selling it to the neighbor as well as sending it to a broker just to put it on the market are my two chosen ways. Again, a lot of it boils down to you have to find what works for you with our jobs. I think, again, finding your niche and finding what works for you is the key here, and the consistency.
Sure. So if you're using a broker to sell some of these, are you closing on them? Are you assigning your contract, or how are you doing that?
Personally, I buy them. I go all the way through title. A lot of the properties that you will get when you're buying something at 30 cents on the dollar do have a lot of hair or problems on title. So whether you got to probate them, whatever you call an attorney. I mean, it's not complicated. It's just figuring out what needs to be done. And, you buy something, you send it to an attorney, call an attorney, they'll talk with you for a few $100 and let them know what's going on. And if they can fix it, you got a smoking deal. When you get into the higher dollar properties, that seems to be a part of the process is you got to figure out how to undo some problems. Whether it's, probate seems
Absolutely.
to be a primary one.
So that brings up two things that cross my mind. I got a buddy of mine who owns a Meineke muffler station down the street from me, and a bunch of the stuff's tied up in like probate because his uncle was one of the owners and his dad's one of the owners, and they're trying to get the uncle off because he passed away, and like it's a mess. And he was like, dude, if you can figure out how to fix the title, he's like, I'll sell it. He's like, and that's the thing. And a lot of these deals is if you offer a solution to somebody's problem, they'll be willing to sell it. And you just got to figure out what their pain point is. Well, first of all, you got to figure out how to get a hold of them. Then you got to figure out what their pain point is and if they're going to sell it for a realistic number, and how you can make money off of it. So I like your idea of talking to the neighbors first. I used to do a lot of tax liens and a lot of tax deed auctions. And one of the only ones that ever went all the way to foreclosure was a 1 acre property. So the owners owned a house and an acre lot next to it that were subdivided off. The bank paid for the house tax lien, but they did not pay for the acre of land. So it took 2 years to foreclose the property, and I offered that land back to the adjoining neighbors, and they're like, no, we don't really want it. It's like, okay, well, this goes right up against your house. So it's like 50 feet off your house. Are you sure you don't want to buy it? They're like, no, we don't want to buy it. No, we're not really interested. So I ended up selling it to a developer on Craigslist. This is years ago. On Craigslist in 48 hours and made $28,000 off the deal.
Awesome.
And that was one of the things I want to see if you do is tax liens or tax deed auctions in Texas or Wyoming and Missouri. Have you looked into it at all?
I haven't. I'll back up. Arkansas used to have a statewide site where you could go in and look at tax properties, and we were able to pick up properties. What is it, over the counter? The ones that have been on the roll for years.
The leftovers.
Nobody's ever doing anything. Yeah, you could go in there and make them an offer on those. So we were picking those up for $50, and we'd flip them for. I think I sold one for. I sold a burned out house for like $3,000. You bought something for $50, you flip it for $3,000. You buy it for $50, you sell it on terms. You sell it on eBay. But Texas, Wyoming, and Missouri, I haven't. That was the only state I messed with tax sale. And since the coastal, I think it's Commissioner of State Lands in Arkansas, they've kind of changed their process, so it's not as easy. The direct mail has been my primary target. I don't think that other than in my county, I'll look at the tax roll properties, but I think there's a lot more travel involved. But maybe it's just my ignorance and I need to dive more into it.
So, I mean, I know a little bit about it, so I'll just highlight it real quick. So a tax lien state is where they put a lien on your property, and there's a hierarchy of liens. So the IRS has the highest position of liens, and then after that is usually the county tax, and after that it could be a water bill, it could be HOA, it can be a construction lien, it could be a contractor's lien. But the higher the lien in the hierarchy, it wipes out the rest of the liens on the property. In some jurisdictions, other jurisdictions you have to pay for. So once you put a lien on the property, in here, after 4 months, you can hire a lawyer. The lawyer oversees the foreclosure process, and it takes about 2 years here to see it through. And then you get the property for whatever the agreed upon price was. A tax deed state like Pennsylvania is where you go to a property, you buy it for whatever it comes up to on auction, and you buy the deed for whatever the face value is. So you can go to an auction and buy it for $1. You can buy it for $100. You have to outbid everybody else. But the tax deeds also come with liens. So there might be $100,000 of lien on a $100 property, and you'll never know it. So now instead of buying it for $100, you're buying it for $100,000,
Wow.
$100. So I don't know what Texas is. I just know what Maryland and Pennsylvania are.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to source deals. If nothing else, it'll show you who's behind on their payments, and you can market to them as well. It's a good way to find
100%.
people to market to.
Interesting.
Tyler had something he wanted to bring up.
No, I was just when you were talking about the farmland, it made me think of the same thing. I bought a piece of property off of somebody in Idaho, and I paid cash for it, my own cash. And then it was a dairy farmer that owned almost every piece of property except for that one to complete his whole area. And he called me up and he's like, "Hey, I'll buy it off of you." I was trying to think of the numbers right now too, but it was for X amount of dollars. I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'll sell it for this." It's like, "I'm not paying that." I'm like, "Cool, I don't have any mortgage on it. I'll just let it sit there until you want to buy it."
Yeah.
And we ended up coming to terms because I think he looked up and saw I had no debt on the property. I'm like, "I don't care. I'll just pay the taxes until you want to buy it."
Yeah.
And like, especially since now that I know that I'm the only piece of property that you don't own.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing really well on it. I'm sure I could have held out and done any more, but I did feel a little bit bad for him. It's a family farm, multi-generational farm. But he tried to strong arm me at first, and I'm like, "No, I don't owe anything on this property. I will let it sit here as long as I want."
That's a big FU. It was like, you want
You're
me
right. He was like, "Yes."
All right.
I will. Tyler, geez, that's
Well,
playing hardball, man. That's good.
Laird Tyler.
They actually, I got an offer on that little farm I got up in the Panhandle last night, and it was from a dairy farmer. And if you want to know the value of some dirt, knowing what a farmer will pay for it, I mean, those guys got it dialed in. So I felt like I've at least doing good on the sales side of that place, because I was a little worried when the broker told me what we could sell it for. But we got the offer yesterday. Now we're just doing a little back and forth on some ridiculousness that they are requesting, but
They want the dirt moved. Get rid of that hill over there for me.
No, he wanted a close date of September, which I thought was ludicrous, and 60 days to check for water, which again I thought, but I was new to messing with farms, so I gave him a little time. I countered. I'm hoping we can meet in the middle somewhere and make this one work for us.
So his stipulation is he wants to see if there's water on the property. I'm guessing if it wants to perk, and then he wants to run all of his tests beforehand.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's doing some test holes for wells, which I mean, if he's going to put a dairy there, he'll need a lot of water. I mean, it's a whole the improvements. I think I was getting raked over the coal. I looked at when you have farmland, I guess you have the potential to actually. They have different terms, but breaking the dirt and breaking it where it's ready to farm. You're putting in the wells and getting the ground ready. And that was another exit strategy that the broker and I talked about. But doing the wells, the cost was just an expenditure I didn't want to outlay. So letting him test for it, it'll give me some good information too, even if he doesn't move forward, because it was going to cost me money to have that done. So
that's one of the cool things is like city folks, most city folks or suburban folks, they want to have permits in place and they want to have everything ready to break ground, utilities in place. Farmland is similar, especially when they have like dairy land, is they're going to use a lot of water. So they also want utilities. It's just a different type. So for us, it's like public utilities, public water, public sewer. Yours is well and septic. So as long as it perks, which is the percolation test, is where the bodily fluids will disperse over the land in a certain amount of time. So same concept, just different markets and different reasons. So when I've looked at developing land before, like there's one in my mind right now. I've got an acre of land that's sitting doing nothing, but the county wants me to do curb cuts. They want me to do sidewalks. They want me to do stormwater management, runoff drains. They want me to have a plan for X, Y, and Z. They want me to do like there's no sidewalks in this entire neighborhood, but they want me to put a sidewalk on this one property. I'm like, this is stupid. This is idiotic. But in order for me to sell this piece of property, I need to have all this stuff in place, and I can demand a higher dollar if I do. It's just like, is it worth it for me? For like just like you, is it worth it for you to perk it and make sure there's well on there beforehand, or have somebody else do it and then he'll buy it? It's just it's like we said earlier, like there's no right or wrong. It's just strategy.
Well, and as I've progressed from buying the little $50 lots in Arkansas to now, you know, I've joined with some other investors, and we're trying to buy bigger ranches, bigger subdivide potential. So what you just described is things we're looking at as we're looking at properties and buying that. Like, what'd you say, Virginia? You had a piece where you could buy it for over 40. It was $1,000 an acre. under is 2,000. That's the value where I'm now looking at virtually every day as I'm trying to find properties where I could buy that 200 and make a bunch of 20s out of it, that I can force that appreciation just by going in there and dividing it up. Go ahead.
One of my buddies has a farm, and he's always got people messaging him like, "Hey, would you be interested in subdividing your 30 or 40 acres?" And he's like, "Absolutely not." And the reason that he doesn't want to do it though is in this area, if you have 30 acres, you get approved for tax write-offs. Whereas if he's subdivided 10 acres off and he has 29 acres now he's not going to get that tax write-off. Like there's little niches in these movements that make a big difference on your
Absolutely.
Expenses.
Absolutely. No, every county has their nuances, and that's why you kind of start honing in on areas. I was looking at the country, and then I found some states I like. Now with the subdivide, I'm strictly looking in Missouri. I'm trying to learn the county rules and regulations, because the closer you get to town, like your deal, they want you to put a sidewalk in. I want to stay in that sweet spot where I'm flying under the radar, able to divide it into 10 acres by strictly doing a survey and sending it to the county and having them check off on it. We bring in the roads if we need to, do as minimal as we can to force the value and make it into something that's more marketable and more affordable. You know, there's not a huge buyer pool for a $2 million place, but if you can make some $200,000 places, you just created a huge opportunity for you.
So you've gone from flipping some burnouts for $50 to 3,000, and now it sounds like you're looking for some basically development opportunities, right?
That's correct.
So is most of your business now just flipping land, or is your goal to more segue towards developing and taking these bigger parcels, making a bunch of smaller parcels? Is that just something you're starting to work on, or is that something you're actively doing?
I have my first subdivide actively going in Missouri, and the answer to the question is I want both working. As I think about that, 4-year mark to give me 26 years before retirement, that's kind of my goal. Doing this specific strategy, you get worried. We've had a pretty I don't know if it's comfortable or secure profession. So in order to leave that, I don't want to, it's so final. When we don't get to just go, oh, I was just kidding, I want to come back to work. When we say we're done, we're done. And they're going to give us whatever our retirement is, and we're going to move on down. So this is just, the subdivide is just another leg where I'm looking at on-market properties. I'm looking at off-market still also. Doing the letters, but it's just another layer, and staying with the consistency of just trying to hyper focus on land. I could have gone off and, my wife and I talked about doing the Airbnb model. I don't know if I have the personality for that, whether I would much rather just kind of add more dirt, a different way of looking at it. It's just, plus I like it, and with the subdivide, it's more, we're going to get boots on the ground. We'll get tractors, all the stuff that I really get fired up about. Those are the things we're talking about. So it's just another layer.
So the best usage of land I've ever seen is actually in Scotland at Dunnan's Castle. So when we first started this, I bought Mike and Tyler a square foot of land at Dunnan's Castle in Scotland, in northern Scotland. And what they did was they basically drop a pin on a piece of land that they own, and they sell off a little block of land. They send you this box of stuff saying that you are now a laird because you're a landowner in Scotland. And it's just, they've made hundreds of thousands of dollars off of this deal, and it's all over the market. So I was at the mastermind that me and Mike were at recently. We were talking about doing that, like in California and New York, is buying a bunch of land and be like, oh, look, I'm in New York now. Oh, look, I'm a Californian now. I don't know why I'm Californian, but that's a whole other story.
You can sell that all over the internet.
Absolutely. So marketing, they did a great job of marketing. That's kind of where I was going with this is the marketing for the land. Like, what do? I've seen things pop up on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, where people are doing videos and aerial shots, and they're just kind of talking about the land they have and marketing that way. Like, Have you thought any other? Have you come up with any other ways to market this stuff?
I am terrible at all of those things. So for me, it's just easier to send it to a broker, let them do their profession the best they can. Finding a good broker is key, but I've seen guys out there that have Instagram and they put it all over it. I tried it. I'm just not consistent. Even the name of our business was done with my daughters in mind of helping me. Well, that went over like a fart in church. They don't have any desire. So, hey, they're just now, because it's summer, thinking, hey, Dad, can I work for you? And I'm like, no, that's just sales. I'll move on. But so, no, I don't. I'm just not as good with the social media. I don't have a lot of desire to try that. I'm sure there's plenty of success to be had doing it.
So you said you don't want to do like the short-term rentals or the long-term rentals yet. You want to focus on land, right?
I don't know if it's I don't want to do it. I think it's more I want to get as much capital as I can and get really good at the land. I think we have our dreams of having the I don't even know if it's passive, having the income come in from maybe a vacation rental or a long-term rental. But when I've done the owner finance on land, which it's only been a few times, when the cash on cash is typically try and keep it at 100%, if not getting all my money back on a down payment. That it's almost laughable when you say what you can make on a $30,000 piece of land. Someone will pay you $600 or $700 a month, and that's 100% cash. There's no I got to fix anything. So there's an appeal to that I really like, as opposed to when I hear you guys talking about the houses, going, shit, I don't know if that's for me.
So the only reason I ask this is because another friend of mine who's rebuilding wagons to make small Airbnbs to stay on the wagons, kind of like the Oregon Trail. What he does is he's going to put them on a piece of land overlooking some farmland and being like,
you got some weird friends, man.
I know. Look at the company I keep. I mean, what do you expect? But like in my mind, I was like, when I just put a trailer there, and I was like, well, if there's a trailer there, it's very Breaking Bad-ish. Like, does Mr. White can come out like creating freaking meth or something like that? But like, if you buy 10 or 20 acres in the middle of Texas and be like, here, have the Texas experience of the Oregon Trail, like it might be a draw. It might be low overhead. But then you're right. Like you have to think about the other things. Like you have to do the cleaning and the turnover and deal with the people and the answering and the questions. And sometimes it gets to be too much. And is it worth it to sub that out to somebody or have somebody else do it or not do it at all? Like it all depends on how you value your time.
I want to think that as I continue to hopefully grow this, at some point you got to figure out where to move money, whether to invest with someone else that's doing something, or I don't know the correct answer. But as you grow capital, you want to look at other options. So potentially buying a place and doing something like that, if it was beneficial, and I could 100% see doing it, but I would almost rather just be a passive guy for somebody else. Right now, I'm choosing to be very focused on my thing, and it's still in its somewhat of an infancy. So as I grow that, maybe over time, I'll start looking at those as an opportunity, because I have looked at properties and you're like, man, that'd be a cool place for an Airbnb, or a glamping was one of them. I looked at like an island place that I'm like, man, you could boat to that and set up a little tent. You start going down this rabbit hole of like, man, I just could go do more letters and try and buy another property.
Welcome to how my mind works.
I've noticed on some of the posts.
Dude, lighthouses, castles.
Yeah. Just in this conversation.
So
wagon Airbnbs.
I love it. I'm down.
Daniel, how big is your team, or how many deals are you doing a year? What does that look like?
This year is really rocking and rolling for us. The team is the people that I've mentioned before. It's the professionals in their industry, whether it be the surveyor or the title company, trying to make relationships with brokers. who will bring you deals that are kind of coming. Bankers is now a new one because I'm using leverage on properties where in the past I was using all my cash. So the team is doing the day-to-day. It's still just me. But that day is it's pretty simple. It's not hard. It's calling the banker or calling the title company and, letting them do their thing, reaching out to the broker saying, hey, have we had any listings? Do we need to change anything? But the amount of deals, I didn't look at before we started, but I bet I'm up to probably 6 this year, 6 flips. So it's not huge numbers by any means, but like I said, I've tried to increase my deal flow. I'm sending more letters. So we're trying to ramp it up every year since, I guess, when COVID in 2020, I tried to really start progressing and turning this into things. And I'm trying to get some momentum. And, all the people that say it happens fast, I think they're full of crap, because a couple of years later, I'm still trying to chug along and keep moving.
I mean, 1 deal, 6 deals, it doesn't make a difference. Like, you're doing deals and making money
Right.
on the side, like getting experience and learning, like, okay, I can tweak this, I can develop this. Like, it's like nobody's going to jump into this thing both feet, into the deep end without knowing how to swim. So it's like, okay, where do I start? Start in the shallow end. It's like, okay, I figured this out. Now you try to figure out a different method, and you just grow. Like, we all have growth phases, and we're still in it. I'm not comfortable doing bulk deals. Like, I just don't have the bandwidth or the capacity for it. Mike, on the other hand, is a deal machine. Like, Mike has the capacity and the bandwidth to do it, even if he has crackhead tenants who are threatening people with hammers and exposing himself and going to court for evictions. That's a whole other story.
Another day.
Yeah, but that's one of those things, like, you don't want to deal with that. None of us want to deal with it, but it's one of those things that comes along with the territory. You might get an undesirable, and you don't have to worry about that with dirt. The only thing I worry about is the utilities. And that's good that you know what your market is. Like, 6 deals or 600 deals, it doesn't make a difference. You're still making money and doing something that other guys aren't.
A lot of people get, I think, confused that more equals better, and more deals is not always a better business model. Like, there's definitely people that kill it doing volume, and there's definitely people that kill it only doing a half a dozen deals a year. Because I think I was joking on here, like, I'd be happy to do 1 deal a year. If it netted $1 million, I would do 1 deal a year. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I see people in DC doing that on a fairly regular basis. They're just doing, like, condo conversions right now are massive in DC because you can't do anything else for the numbers. So they'll buy a row house, they'll dig the basement out, and they'll pop the top and add an entire another story. So now, instead of being a 3-story row house, now it's 5 stories, and they'll turn one into each to a different condo, and they'll make $1 million on it. I'm like, that's actually genius. It's just, I don't have the bandwidth or capacity to deal with the permitting process. I can't find the contractors, but the people who do, I mean, they're killing it. Should I readjust my sites and focus on that? Maybe. I don't know. Does it really entice me? Not really. If it was a lighthouse or an airport, then, maybe I take a swing at it. It's just, you got to figure out what works for you. And there's nothing wrong. Like we said earlier, like, there's no right or wrong. It's just what works for you and what you enjoy doing. So land is obviously it.
It's working for me. I enjoy it. And I think the idea of doing what you're saying is obviously appealing to everyone, but in order to get that, you still got to do the stuff. You can't just magically say, I want to do this $1 million deal and it happened. You have to put in work on the $20,000, the $2,000 deals until you get that one that comes across your desk that says it is $1 million. I don't think you get to henpeck them, or is that the word? You don't get to pick them. And
it's not low hanging fruit where you can just go out to the market and be like, oh, this is the next deal, this is the deal.
That's why, I think the guys at work that I've tried to pitch doing this to, they'll start it and they realize it's work. I'm in this every day. I wake up thinking about it. It's the same fire that I had 20-something years ago about running calls is the fire I have for this. That's why I feel like I've found what I need to be doing. But, obviously, whether it's the flips or the subdivides now, I'd love to do. I told the broker in Missouri we'd do 4 deals like the one we're doing now a year. That's pretty awesome. You make more than what I'm making at the fire department, and add that to some retirement, that actually has some legs to me leaving. It doesn't give me any of this grand life of travel, which, you know, there's aspects of me that want to go do certain things that I want a certain amount of money, but that shows that if I did leave, there is I'll be okay. My family will be okay. So
just in case, it's a
yeah,
safety net, just in
yeah,
case.
yeah. That the retirement money is not something I want I got to have something else. So dialing all of that in is kind of where my head is.
I had this conversation with a cop recently, and he's like, dude, a lot of people in my department, like they're doing 30 years, and on the back end, they're working at Walmart as a greeter. He's like, I don't want to work at Walmart. And that was the example he gave. I'm not sure if he'd ever actually able to do that, but like that's the conversation we had, is like, you have to have something else if you can't afford your lifestyle, or you need to adjust your lifestyle to fit what you want.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tyler?
Well, I say a lot of them don't think about it until it's too late, unfortunately. It's like, you know, I use an example. Obviously I do mortgages, and I had a captain that I know well. Actually, I worked for him, and we did his loan, and he was like, dude, I don't know how I'm going to do this when I retire. And he's already 55. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, you know, you had like a 30-year career, and a lot of guys, like you mentioned, Daniel, they don't do the side hustle or anything like that because it's easier to go work the overtime shifts. You know, you do the same thing. You're there already at the station. You can knock a couple shifts out, and you make great money, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. The only problem is the day you retire, that is no longer an option. You can't go pick up an OT at the station to go make, and it's good money. You can't go do that anymore. Yeah. And I think when it's with stuff like this right now, I think, you know, you're still a few years away from retirement. You get this set up to where that's an additional income stream, and you don't have to worry about it. Then you don't have to do those things that you don't want to do. And for the most part, guys, any type of job like where we make good money, you make good overtime, you get so used to it, it's almost like transactional money. The problem is once those transactions stop, you can't do anything. And you're right, you don't want to go be working as a fireman for 30 years and then go have to be a Walmart cleaner to supplement your income at that point. Nothing wrong with it. It's just that's not what you want to do. You have to start early. So I love it. I like the land too. I like how there's so many options with land, especially the terms. I like terms. It's just another way to make money every single month. You don't have really any tenants, and there's so much creativity involved in land that you can do so many things with. My sister lives in Tyler. Her husband and her father-in-law, they take a lot of rural land, agricultural land. They sit on it. They figure out how to convert it, and then, you know, they sell it and make a great profit. And they don't have to do a lot of deals every year. That's the beauty of it too. Like Mike said, you give me one deal that makes $1 million a year or something, I will tell everybody anywhere I say, hey, how many deals do you do? One a year. That's it. Yeah. It's a vanity thing. The numbers is a vanity thing. The net to me and my family is what matters to me.
Yeah.
I made a post about that recently. It was like gross is vanity and net is sanity. And I was like, that's kind of a good point, because you see some of these people, they're banging their chest like, I've got 100 doors. I'm like, yeah, but you only make $100 a door, so that's $1,000 a month. I'd rather have one property that makes $1,000 a month than 10. So it's also bandwidth and capacity. So it all depends on what your goals are. So,
that can also spread your risk out too. You just mentioned about my crackhead tenant, like. He's been a tenant for a couple years at this point. In the last 45 days, he's had what I can only describe as a kamikaze death spiral back to earth. I have no idea what's going on with him. I'm not a shrink. But I was like, what if I would have only had one property and this is what was happening? You know, so having 10 houses does spread your risk out a little bit. But I understand what Aaron's saying. Like, everybody likes to talk about number of doors or gross, and none of that really matters. You know, and frankly, whatever your end goal is, that's what really matters. You know, like my goal now is to spend more time with these little guys, right? Like I want to hustle and grind, and like there's a time to work, but there's also like, I'm not always looking for the highest profit. I don't have to do all these deals. Like my goal is to maybe sell on terms. Maybe I'm like making a little less money than doing the whole development, but I have a lot more time. So Aaron had on here about, can we explain about selling on terms? So, you know, I purchase on terms, I sell on terms. And frankly, once I flipped that switch in my head, like it opened up a lot more deals to be potential deals versus not. Oh, it doesn't fit this buy box. I can't buy with cash. They won't take this discount. It doesn't work, where now it's like, okay, you want $100,000 for that house. Well, my cash price was 70, but like I'm doing one right now, I'm paying 0% interest. Just every month, it's a straight principal payment. So, okay, I'll give you the 100,000, but I'm paying 0% interest for 5 years, So it's like using terms to buy is awesome, and selling on them. Obviously, I'm not going to sell on 0% interest. I usually sell on like 8 to 12, but terms are amazing. So I don't know if you want to speak about that a little bit, but
I'm not super familiar. I've done, I actually just closed on one that went, he closed early. I've got one property right now on terms. And when I say terms, you're basically owner financing the property. You buy it, I think I have 30 grand into it. So I bought this 500 acres in Wyoming. I got 30 grand into it, and I'm selling it to him for $600 a month for, I can't even remember. I don't know all the numbers, so forgive me in that regard. But basically that $600 a month is 100% positive. It's
all profit.
It's 100% profit because he put a down payment on it. I think the down payment covered the 30 grand of my initial purchase price.
Beautiful.
So when we talk about terms, it's like what you buy the terms on. So on terms is just a way of saying the owner's terms and the seller's terms.
Yes, we're owner financing it to them, and that is the terms. Whether it's the model is probably more geared towards the lower dollar property. If you can buy something for 20 grand, you can get your cash out of the thing in a year easily. And then you've got cash flow for, if you want to push it out to 10 or 12 years, you can get that 8 to 10% interest. It is a model that I probably need, again, as you built capital, you probably need to shift towards looking more at those kind of opportunities where if I could go out and buy $100,000 worth of property, I don't know what the math would be, but the cash flow on it would probably put me into the $3,000 or $4,000 a month easily, buying multiple properties. But getting to that place, I'm just starting to creep into this area where I need to start looking at other opportunities, whether it's the subdivides or the terms is kind of the term we've given it. But it's
so I'd like to break that down a little bit. So, because I love this. So my goal is to get all my money back out of a deal within 2 years. It's gotten harder over the years, but it's not on. It's still realistic. So to break your deal down, you bought it for say $30,000, and then you're going to turn around and sell it to somebody, and you're going to owner finance the deal. But first of all, they have to do a down payment. So we'll say $30,000. So now you've recovered all of your income, and you sold it to him for, you said $300,000.
I think it's $500 a month for 6 years. So I don't know what that pencils out to.
So that's $12,000 a year times 5 years. It's $60,000. So you're going to double your money in that time frame. And because he put down the $30,000, you're immediately cash flowing. And that's
you're spreading the gains out over 5 years too.
Yep. So instead of having to pay capital gains on all that at once, now you're spreading it out as earned income and lowering your taxable income.
This particular property is tough to do because he and I were partners on the buy side, and then he decided he wanted to keep it because he lives close to it. And so this one is not the best example, but it does prove that the opportunity in land, to be able to buy something for $20,000 or $30,000 down, that particular property, you're probably going to sell it. Even if you were to flip it, it's probably over in the 50 to 60 range on the way we're buying them. So you could even adjust that a little bit if you're willing to owner finance it. So you say you're able to sell it for 75, they're going to come in and you can ask for as much down as you you're comfortable with. The people that want to sell them fast, they'll ask for a lower down and a low down payment and really string it out. But you can structure it in any way you want. There's not a lot of rules to it. You kind of got to know your market and find where people are willing to pay. And the higher the property, the probably kind of like the houses and any other asset type, you're going to get a different clientele. If you're buying some junk in the desert of Nevada, you're going to get a different person that's going to pay $100 a month for that versus
it's like Breaking Bad. They're gonna be doing meth in a trailer on your property.
Oh yeah.
Tyler,
you're just the bank at that point.
Tyler, you're gonna jump in and say something about the terms too.
Well, and it's cool because you just open your pool of properties that you're able to buy. With it by getting creative. Like I'm thinking, Mike's partner Bill, he and I would always talk about most of the guys in the groups that we're in. It's easy to get to those 2 to 3, maybe 2 to 5 deals a month, right? But we were always trying to figure out, what's the secret sauce? How are these guys expanding beyond that? And it was like after talking so much and figuring out our marketing, it's like you can only scale so much before you have to, increase your training, I guess, for lack of a better word, to get those additional deals. And I'm thinking, Mike, for you and Bill, I've seen you guys grow. A big portion of that, or at least a growing portion of that, has to be buying and selling on terms, because you can't buy on a flip strategy every single house. You can't buy on a wholesale strategy every single house. You can't buy rentals, the same thing. And for Daniel, you can't buy certain pieces of land at like $50,000 straight cash purchase. But if you can structure things on terms, you open up your buying pool, and then you're also able to resell it on the same thing.
I love the concept of this, because it's like there's not one way to skin a cat. Like there's no wrong answer. I think that's the highlight of this conversation is there's no wrong answer. It's just what you're comfortable with and the highest and best use and the way to different strategies.
And as you kind of educate yourself and get better, there is so many opportunities that open up, whether you're bringing in partners that want to buy the place, and then you're going to offer them a return on their money, and then you can keep the difference in that cash flow. There's so many weird structures, whatever it's kind of endless into how you start growing. And that's where a lot of the fun is coming in for it with me. And what was cool about being a part of with you guys is because doing something with other responders and being in the guys that work's ear saying, hey, let's do a deal together. However you structure it, it's so vast. And all in a little piece of dirt. You're buying, we can exit it on terms. You can flip it, you can partner it, give them a return. You can split the profits. However, it opens up a huge ocean of opportunity.
Mike, I've never asked you, is this one of your favorite ways to structure deals is on terms, or is it just another tool in the toolbox for you, Mike?
I would say it's more of a tool in a toolbox right now, but I can tell you as I start to think about the next 5 years and what that looks like, that residual income obviously becomes important. And I used to only look at it as the way to acquire that was rental units, where now, the one side of my board is notes. I would rather structure some of my deals, not all of them, to where I get to function as the person making the terms and not just selling it all at once. So to sum it up, yes, it's becoming probably one of my more favorite options because, like Tyler said, there's only so many deals in your given market at any given month or quarter or year that fit that investor criteria. So you're only going to get a piece of that small amount of deals. So a way for me to increase the number of deals I get out of that small piece, because let's face it, most people, 98% of them or whatever, I just made that statistic up, 98% of people can go list their house, even with the interest rates going up, on the market and get a good price for it. We're kind of like what Daniel said about you got some hair on the deal, you got some issues that you have to clean up. There's usually a reason somebody's selling it at a discount or needs to sell it or whatever the case is. So, if I only can give them a cash offer, well, I'm only going to get a small piece of that pie. Whereas if I can do a cash offer, or I can buy on terms, or I could structure the deal in a couple different ways that solve their problem, that's going to allow me to capture more of those finite deals in my market at any given point in time. So I would say overall, yes, it's definitely become one of my more favorite strategies, and primarily becoming one of my favorite exit strategies to increase that residual income every month.
So, Daniel, I know there's a big disconnect between country folk and city folk. So, why would somebody buy large land parcels, the farmland, recreational? Like, why do you see somebody buying these parcels of land from you?
Well, a lot of it is kind of area specific. The farm in the Panhandle, I discussed dividing it and making it smaller, if it could add value. But again, the professional that I chose to use in that market, being the broker that was going to resell it, he said that was the parcels that were most sought after. I was thinking dividing it in half might add a little per acre value, but he disagreed. So trust in that market. But to answer your question, I think it's very market specific. 40 acres is a lot different in an area with a lot of woods in Missouri than in 40 acres in Wyoming. That's just a lot of more flat prairie. So a lot of it is kind of gearing it towards what the area is most known for, or what properties would do the best. Yeah, demand, that'd be a good word.
So here's the reason. It's kind of a leading question, I guess. So some people buy land for recreation, some buy land for farmland, like the dairy one you have now. Some buy it for hunting, and you can do more stuff with it. So there's another guy in the group named Matt Blosser. He's another firefighter. He's in Baltimore, I think. And Matt, he goes out to West Virginia to buy large parcels of land, and then he'll log the property, and then he'll pay for the land acquisition. And he'll turn around and sell the land for what he bought it for. Now he thinned the trees out. And there's always arguments from like the tree hugger groups about don't cut down trees versus, you need to keep a healthy canopy going. So sometimes you need to thin the tree herd or whatever. But there's multiple different ways for a reason to buy land, whether it be 1 acre or 100 acres. Like everybody has a different reason to own it, but you got to find the best usage. Like 1 acre of land in the desert is worthless. Like that's just, what are you going to do with 1 acre land in the desert? But if you give me 1,000 acres, maybe I can do something with that. Maybe we can do some kind of recreation or some dirt tracking or some off-roading or whatever it might be. So highest and best use for all the parcels of land. We're at 57 minutes, so we're gonna start wrapping this thing up. Do you have anything you want to highlight or go over before we start asking the final questions?
No, I think I got to speak a little bit about what I do, so I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. So let me ask you a question. So let me ask you a couple questions. The first one is, if you can go back and give your younger self advice, what advice would that be?
I think we mentioned it a little bit here. In regards to the profession, I would have prepared a little better. I feel very behind. We all focus on the retirement and think that is the end all be all. And it's when you get into start looking at the numbers and you hear guys that constantly, it was eye-opening for me when the idea of when you're going to retire is you just keep looking at this number and it draws you back in. So I would prepare in some fashion a little better financially.
So have a game plan for the end of it.
Yeah.
And don't wait till you're 5 years out. Plan
it's easy. Yeah. It's easy though to get caught in that trap where it's like, oh, even for me, like retirement's 5 years and change away. Well, that's really not that far when you're talking about retirement. The day to day, it seems like it can be a while, but anybody, with kids or whatever, even, I don't know, it goes by a lot faster. And, it's never too early to start that planning process. And I think we could all probably agree. We wish we would have started a little bit sooner, but we were too busy jamming meat thermometers in other people's legs and stuff like that, or whatever the case was.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question is going to be, what's your motivation to move forward and better your position?
It's 100% my family. I mean, everything I do is for them. So every time and getting to do this business versus working a part-time job or working overtime, and it allows me to get off of here and go have lunch with them because summer's here, and there's nothing better. You talking about spending more time with your family. It's 100% what all this is about. So
I think that's a good answer. I think that's a pretty strong answer that most people have is like legacy, making their family's life better in the long run, putting yourself in a better position for when you retire, so you don't have to work at Walmart part-time. If people want to get a hold
really
of you,
want to,
I mean, if you want to be a greeter, by all means, like keep yourself company. But I mean, it's all what your desires are. Like if that's what you want to do, I'm not going to knock it. Like it's all personal preference. So Daniel, if people want to reach out to you or look at your website, how would they contact you? What would they look for?
Well, I'm on social media. You guys, Daniel Browne, BROWNE. I think, honestly, when I thought about if this was going to be a question, it would be to just call me. I'm old school in regards to, I would much rather discuss if you had an interest in this, just pick up the phone and, text me, call me. So, I mean, give my phone number, put it out there, however y'all want to do it.
Do you want to put your phone number out there?
Yeah, I'll do that. I mean, it's 817-480-2219. I love to see if it rings because I'd love to talk to other guys that do this job and would like to talk about this business. So, but
all the firemen cops out there, please do not send nudes. Do not send nudes.
Yeah. And I'm not selling any Aussies on Craigslist either.
How about the website? What's the website?
It's LandSisters.com.
And that's because of the 2 daughters you got?
That is because of the girls.
I figured as much. Daniel, I appreciate you coming out and spending an hour with us. If anybody wants to reach out to Daniel, he's on Facebook. He's part of the group. I think you and Matt Blosser need to hook up at some point and start discussing some of your strategies.
100%. I'd love to learn the timber market. That's a whole another rabbit hole you can go down.
Absolutely. All right. Anything in closing, guys?
No, man, thanks for getting on here and sharing this topic because I know virtually nothing about it. So this was educational for me as well, and I greatly appreciate your time, man.
Thank y'all.
All right, First Responder Financial Freedom. I have no idea what episode this is because
18.
I can't count. 18, episode 18 with Daniel.
We're not medics. We can't count to 20. All right. All right, guys, have a good one.
Have a good one.
See y'all.
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.